Good morning and welcome to our third day of our tnAchieves 100,000 student enrolled celebration. We are really glad that you could join us this morning for a really exciting panel with three of our state's community college presidents. If you tuned in yesterday morning, you saw four of our state's college presidents talking about the impact on our colleges. Today, we're going to talk about special programs, and tnAchieves, I think a lot of times, and Tennessee Promise is thought of as just free college, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. And so today we're going to talk about some of those special programs. A couple of real quick housekeeping points. You have probably noticed that as an audience member, you are muted and that your camera is turned off. You will be able to interact with us. At the bottom of your screen, there are two options. There's a chat box and a Q&A box. The chat box offers you the opportunity to communicate with each other as audience members as well as with our panelists. And the Q&A box is where you can ask questions. I'm going to be monitoring those. We will save them for the end, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So as we're going along, please feel free to type your questions there, and we will come back and answer those at the end. I also have the great pleasure today of introducing my boss of the last 12 years, our first and only ever executive director at tnAchieves, our fearless leader, Chrissy. Chrissy, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Thanks, Graham. Excited to be here. I woke up this morning thrilled for today's panel because we get to share all the non-financial components and pilots that are happening at tnAchieves. Every day I wake up with, I feel like, some sort of crazy idea. And I'm super thankful that the three people we have today actually say yes 90% of the time when I call to say, please, let's try this. And so I'm thankful to each of them for their leadership. Before we jump into questions, I want to just give a brief introduction of the three of them. Dr. Tracy Hall is the president of Southwest Tennessee Community College, and I would say she has been a transformative leader at that institution, just blown away with the progress that has been made since Tracy stepped into the role. Dr. Shanna Jackson is the president of Nashville State. I've known Shanna for a very long time before she was president. She has a lot of vision. I'm excited for the students at Nashville State because she is an absolute dynamo. And then finally, someone who I call at least once a day, Dr. Anthony Wise, president of Pellissippi State. Under Anthony's leadership, Pellissippi has grown into the largest community college in Tennessee, and they do some really amazing things at Pellissippi State because Anthony is always open to putting students at the center of the conversation and trying to do what is right for students and families. So thanks to the three of you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Notice I said 90% of the time. Not I don't remember all the times when you said no.
When did we say no?
That's right.
Anthony does sometimes.
Oh, okay. So that's him. Okay.
I thought it was just once.
All right, we'll go in the order that I introduced you, and we'll start with Tracy. Tracy, can you give me a bit of information about Southwest and the students that you serve there?
Yes. Well, we are a large institution. Our usually pre-COVID, we had about 9,700 students. We are in Memphis, Tennessee. We serve Shelby County and Fayette County, which is a combination of rural in Fayette County, but mainly in Shelby County, it's urban and suburban. Our demographics, we are a predominantly Black institution. Over 60% of our students are African American. About the same percentage of students are female. So we have a large Black population, large female population. Most of our students are part-time attendees, and so that Also, it gives us that diversity in terms of students' needs, in terms of from a full-time student and a part-time student. We have over 100 career and technical programs, with our signature programs being nursing, and programs in our business and technology division. But our largest programs or interests and credentials that we award are in our Tennessee transfer pathways. And so our faculty and staff are very committed to our students. Approximately 96% of our students are from Shelby County, and then after they graduate, they remain in Shelby County. So we feel that we have, and we've done an economic impact study, we have a tremendous impact in the Memphis area, and are really focused on not just credential attainment, but moving our community from poverty to prosperity.
That's great. Thank you, Tracy. I always love visiting your campuses. They're always like vibrant and alive and students everywhere. So it's definitely one of my favorite places.
And we're located all throughout Memphis. Thank you, Chrissy, for saying that.
Everywhere.
I forgot that. We're everywhere. So yeah, we're all over. So wherever, there's no excuses. You can walk, you take the bus, we're everywhere.
I love it. How about you, Shanna? Talk to us a little bit about Nashville State.
Well, absolutely. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be on a panel with these two. I mean, this isn't an everyday thing, so it's a special treat. Nashville State, I will say, pre-COVID was over 8,000 students. We are, of course, a comprehensive community college, but I don't know that folks understand, we just became a community college in 2002. We were a state technical institute before then. So we're one of the youngest community colleges in Tennessee. We're the most diverse community college in the system. Only about 53% of our students are white, almost 30% are African American, and we have a very growing Latino population, but we have an international population. Over 20 plus languages are spoken. And so we really do reflect Nashville. But we serve 7 counties, so we actually have a mixture of urban, suburban, and rural communities. We currently have 6 campuses, and we're building a 7th. So they, just like Southwest, we're everywhere that we need to be to serve our communities. The population here is somewhat similar to Southwest, as we are predominantly women. Definitely the first generation, low income. Our students come to us with the first desire is basic needs. And so we're seeing that post-COVID or in COVID, that the need to serve students holistically is our focus, because they need more than academic support when they come to Nashville State. So we have a mixture of programs, still hold a lot of technical programs from being a state technical institute, but we are predominantly transfer, have wonderful health science programs, focus on IT. And then actually in our rural community, we have a very interesting industrial process control program that has some great apprenticeship opportunities for students. So that's an area we have been working towards to give more than just work-based learning opportunities, to really link them to employment. So the apprenticeship programs has been a focus for us.
Well, and I know you've been hyper-focused on workforce development with the booming Nashville economy, right?
That's correct. And so that area has been doing some really interesting partnerships with our corporate partners. We have a very unique learn and earn opportunity with Tractor Supply, where we turn the classroom into their office space, and our students are actual employees while they're in school, and we have had several actually hired after graduation that are making $60,000+. We're also doing training at locations. We have a partnership with Asurian, which was the first IT apprenticeship program that I'm aware of in the state. And so there are a lot of interesting mixes that are happening in the Nashville area that we are so happy to be a part of. I like to say we're a workforce solution partner. So if you've got an issue, come to Nashville State and we will figure it out, because we want to be a strong pipeline to the needs of our workforce in our community.
I love that. Thank you, Shanna. All right, Anthony, tell us about Pellissippi State.
Oh, thanks for having me this morning, Chrissy. It's great to be with you and with my colleagues from Memphis and Nashville. Miss seeing you regularly in person, but this is a good substitute for today. Pellissippi State has grown, well, was growing before the pandemic. We're all facing some challenges related to that, but has been the largest community college in the state for the last several years. We have 5 campus locations in Knox and Blount County, so we're in East Tennessee. Our population is different than Nashville and Memphis. We have about 18%, 19% of our students are diverse, 82% majority white. So that's who we serve in terms of demographic. Historically, we've been balanced 50-50 between male and female and 50-50 between full-time and part-time. But over the last few years, we're starting to see that separation where we see more women enrolled in the institution than men. And with the pandemic, we're actually seeing more part-time than full-time for the first time in a while. Like both Southwest and Nashville State, the majority of our students, about 2/3, are interested in transfer. Historically, that was through partnerships primarily with the University of Tennessee, but there are so many transfer opportunities that have developed over the course of the last 10 or 12 years that students who complete an associate degree, whether at Pellissippi State or anywhere else in the system, really do have some great choices based upon the opportunities that are being created both with publics and privates across the state and across the region. So that's good to see. In our workforce programs, our strength historically has been in engineering technologies. We started with chemical, electrical, and mechanical, and kind of have grown from that. Still have strength in those areas, and then welding, nursing, media technologies is strong in nursing, and then hospitality and culinary arts as well. So pretty diverse mix of students, programs, and like Nashville State and Memphis, we have some areas that we have a couple of urban locations. We've got a couple out in the suburbs, and we've got one that serves kind of a rural area as well.
You also have a really unique high school partnership. Do you want to talk about the Career Magnet Academy a bit? It is unique, I think.
Yeah, so we have a Knox County high school located on one of our campuses at Strawberry Plains, Far East Knox County. It attracts students. Students go through an application process to go to school there. And the intent is really for them to get to the point where they are enrolled in college classes by the start of their junior year. Increasingly, that's starting to happen at the midpoint of the sophomore year. And I think this year there'll be 10 or 12 students who are going to graduate with an associate's degree before they finish high school. So it's a pretty unique opportunity. We started with some narrowly defined career pathways, but in the last 2 or 3 years, we've opened up the curriculum so students can really choose what they want to do at Pellissippi State. So if they want to do welding, they can pursue that pathway. If they want to prepare to do transfer and become a teacher through a program at the University of Tennessee, then they can do that as well. But it is a unique program on our Strawberry Plains campus.
Yeah, I think it's such a cool program, and it's fun to see the students there so intentional about their path so early, which I think is really great. Okay, Anthony, last fall we celebrated our 10,000th enrolled student at Pellissippi State. So 100,000 this year statewide, but 10,000 specifically at Pellissippi State. As our first college with a larger student cohort, what has Tennessee Achieves meant for your institution and students?
So when I think back to our first conversations when we started down this road, is it 12 years ago now? Seems hard to believe. One of the things that I thought was great.
It's only 15.
Is that what became Tennessee Achieves and Tennessee Promise did a lot of the things that we wanted to do at Pellissippi State in terms of getting young people to think about going to community or technical college well in advance, not waiting till the last 2 or 3 days of August before registration, say, hey, I'm going to go to the local community college and start my post-secondary. So Tennessee Achieves has provided a structure that I think is very beneficial to the students, which is always its priority, but has also helped institutions serve students better. So that process of applying for a program, working with a mentor, completing the FAFSA 6 or 7 months before school starts in the fall, making a commitment to attend an institution. All of those things have been very beneficial, I think, to Pellissippi State and our peer institutions across the system. I think one of the most important things, one of the things that's happening right now is that students who are part of the class of 2021, and this includes one of my children, are having to think about, what the community and technical colleges in the state have to offer. They're going to have to go through a process where they learn about that. They know they have to do financial aid. They know they get to work with a mentor, and then they get to decide whether that's the best choice for them. And I really think that's been a beneficial thing. But and then over the course of the years, you and I have worked together and had a chance to kind of layer other opportunities to make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. So if you're not college ready when you graduate from high school, let's put in place a bridge program to help you get closer to that mark, because we know the further we get you along that line, the more likely you are to be successful when you start that first semester. So one of the things I've appreciated about Tennessee Achieves over the years is its alignment with serving students, and its alignment with helping students, helping institutions implement practices that are best for supporting students.
Yes, so Bridge started at Pellissippi with 27 students in the first cohort in 2012, and now has served nearly 4,000 students across the state. So again, it's sort of always raising your hand to say yes. Similar question to you, Tracy. So we launched Tennessee Achieves in Shelby County in 2011. So we've been there spending time and digging in with students for, 9 years, almost a decade now.
Yeah.
What do you think Tennessee Achieves has meant for your community, your institution, and its students?
Well, I know, Chrissy, when we started working together, I didn't arrive in Memphis until 2015, and I inherited a number of challenges, to say the least. And so when we started to work together, and I remember you and I were meeting in my conference room, and you brought to me all this data about our Tennessee Promise applicants. And it was just mind-boggling to see that. And what was really that I appreciated about that experience was that, as I mentioned, inheriting a lot of challenges, and we were newly members of Achieving the Dream. And so we were looking at big picture in terms of all of the redesigning the student experience from recruitment to completion. And so we were looking at how do we fix the processes and going through all of these things. And what helped during our conversation was that you helped us to see also how we could hone in on certain problems that, while we were focusing on the big picture for all of our students, you brought that data to the table, literally the table, and shared with us the gaps in how our students were potential students were completing the application, but not going through the process to enroll in the whole summer melt. And so we were able to hone in on that population. So we were looking at the big picture and really wrestling with all of the challenges that we were facing as a college, but able to have a real strategy to really address the needs of this particular population. So I think that has really been beneficial for us to not only look at the big picture, but also look at, let's hone in and get some quick wins and have some successes immediately. And so I think that has been extremely a positive relationship. The focus, and I know we'll talk about it later, but on the increasing access for students and that nudge that students need and making sure, and then realizing that students have the summer melt. And so what do we do about that? I really appreciated that and the innovation that we were able to just, be innovative in addressing this issue and not just doing what we've always done. And if I recall, we were able to put together this program in like 6 weeks, which is just
or less. It was
or less, which that's unheard of in higher ed, because we like to meet and have committees and task forces for at least a year before we begin anything. So we started and got this together in 6 weeks. So it's like that in itself is amazing. But the partnership has been fantastic.
Yeah, I loved in the very beginning how you just jumped in with both feet and you were always so transparent with like the challenges that you were facing, but also optimistic about the future. I mean, I remember that meeting specifically, and you were like, can you email me all of this?
Right.
Yeah.
And she had just reams of paper and data, and I'm like, oh my God.
I know. I'm such a data nerd. I feel like every time I walk into one of your offices, you're like, here she comes with her binder. Like, I love
No,
it.
that was great. That really helped. So that very good partnership.
So great. All right, Shauna. So we launched in 2014 at Nashville State, pre you becoming president of the institution. But same question, what do you think Tennessee Achieves has meant for your institution and students?
Well, first, I do want to say I was at Columbia State when I heard that you were going to Nashville, and I thought, why did you skip us? Why are we not a part of this? And then I came to Nashville State and I understood. You know, prior to knowing Tennessee Promise would be statewide, there was a definite need in the Nashville area and the students we serve to really present more opportunity or more access to post-secondary education. And so having gone from a state technical institute, a community college, we didn't have all the tools, to be quite frank, of how to recruit traditional students, period. And so I think Tennessee Achieves and Tennessee Promise really helped give some structure and some thought to the institution on how would you actually recruit and then retain students that are coming out of high school, because that had not been our market. We were heavy adult, heavy part-time, and so it's been a change and a shift. And so I think opportunity and access for students, but I think exposure and awareness to the college. And so just as Tracy is talking about, that opportunity to sit down with you and your staff and really look at data and really think through, not just that they filled out the application, but they went to the next step and how we could really work together. So I think there's been a lot of value for an institution that has its challenges. Just like Tracy, you walk in and you realize that there are a lot of things that need to be fixed, if you will. But having Tennessee Achieves and Tennessee Promise available and having that framework, and then you can really, like you said, Tracy, focus on a population of students, and that you don't have to do it by yourself, that we can call Chrissy, we can call other people. And you actually, I think what people need to know is that you bring information to us. You've said it, but I want to stress that while I'm thinking about a million things, when we talk, we're thinking about the pipeline of students who really need support. And it's not that I don't think about them, it's just not in the same way you do. And so when you bring that information, I remember us talking about Nashville being the outlier when you put a person as a navigator on the campus with contacts, like they weren't following up. Like we were the one school and we thought, well, that's why student activities aren't as well. And so having to rethink that, although it may be working for other community colleges, it's not working for Nashville State. So why don't we talk about how we can make it different? And that partnership, I think, is so special. I know we're going to talk about some of the other things that we're working on, but when I think about, you know, Nashville State and the benefit that it goes without saying. I mean, Anthony talked about what it means to the student and to the family. I wanted to talk about from the institution's perspective that it is such a great asset, especially to me as a president, as a new president, to get that data and to be able to hone in and say, this doesn't just impact Nashville, it impacts my whole service area.
Right.
And so it was really a wonderful thing to have in place already, but we know that now, because I consider myself an enhancer, now we just need to make it better, right? We just need to work to make it better. And the recognition that it's not cookie cutter. I mean, it definitely, I feel that you customize the experience for the institution and how we need to serve our students and what barriers we have. And the Bridge program, again, is a great way to know that there's some academic deficiencies let's address them before they start. And then we had an awesome opportunity this summer to do the success course, which I think was very beneficial. And we were really wanting to do what Southwest was doing with the Summer Institute, but COVID hit us, because I think our students need that as well. And so I just think it's been a great benefit. And again, you know, you look back and realize that it did increase college going rates for students in my service area from the inception. We've got work to do to get that number back up again, but it had an immediate direct benefit, opportunity for students, and again, exposure for the institution, that you are, you know, through this program, telling people about community colleges. So it's a marketing tool in a way that I would not have been able to just spend the dollars to do. And so I think we all benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you see that, you know, our philosophy is we're all in this together. You know, we see ourselves as an extension of your institution. So, you know, your success is our success and our success is your success, right? And as long as we continue to talk about students, I feel like, you know, all tides rise. And so, yeah, no, I really enjoyed getting to know your specific institutions, because as you described in the beginning, right, what works in Memphis does not necessarily work in Knoxville. And so that's a really fun puzzle for us to navigate at Tennessee Achieves. So like now, for example, Summer Institute, which we'll talk about, like, I do think it's a beautiful fit for Nashville. Will it fit at, you know, in Knoxville? I don't know. I don't know if the need is there. And so continuing to think about, as we lift up these innovative programs, like who can, and by who, I mean, which students can benefit the most. So zooming out a bit, Anthony, we are also always sort of thinking in a creative, innovative space. Every time I call you, I think you and I are talking about a new idea. Why do you think that innovation in higher education is so important?
You know, I think clearly in the state for the last 10 or 12 years, we've focused on this notion of post-secondary attainment and how that can improve the lives of individuals and families, but also our communities and regions within the state and the state as a whole. I think at community colleges, we start with a base factor. You know, the people we hire in the classroom and on our staff, I mean, they care about students. I mean, I think that's fundamental to the work. But a lot of times we've approached that work with creating programs that serve, in a lot of cases, a limited number of students. So we're trying to talk about moving large numbers of students through a pipeline, helping them get to a point of post-secondary attainment where they've got a credential or a degree, a set of skills that's going to allow them to, we're talking about this on another call earlier in the week, you know, have some upward mobility economically. Those are things that I think if the Drive to 55 is successful in the state of Tennessee, it's got to be built upon a foundation of upward mobility. So I think the innovation is important, and my colleagues have already touched on, sometimes it's slow in coming because of our committees and our task force and our deliberative nature. Because we've got to start moving systems. We've got to start moving students through systems and structures as opposed to moving smaller numbers of students through programs. So one of the things I think that's been helpful about Tennessee Achieves is, so let's pilot something at Pellissippi State like the Bridge program, which I think is great for the academic work it allows students to do over the course of summer in preparation for entry into the fall. How can it be replicated at other institutions? Are there variations that need to be made depending on the kind of students that institution serves? But the other thing that program does that I love is it gives students 3 weeks of being on a college campus before they are a college student. So they get to know a couple of faculty. They get to know now over 100 students in the program, well, pre-COVID days, you know, from spending time in a classroom with them and having lunch together with the group and hearing from local speakers. So that innovation is important because, you know, we're trying to make significant change, and part of that change is coming within our institutions, as Tracy talked about, but part of it has to come about within our communities. And, you know, how do we build the kind of platforms and structures and systems that can have a broad change that we want to see across our state? And I think Tennessee Achieves and its partnership with Tennessee Promise has one that's been able to do that.
No, I think it's so important. You often, I think I stole this phrase from you, talk about like the boutique programs that you're able to really see movement on, but they're so small that you have to think about scaling. And I do think like our partnership works to, yes, start more boutique-y type programs, but then thinking about how do we measure, what's the data telling us, and how can we be fiscally responsible, but also provide the opportunity for every student or every student who has this specific need. Tracy, Shanna, any additional comments around why innovation is so important in higher education?
I think Anthony is exactly, right in that, and I think I mentioned, and Anthony also said about our processes. What we tend to do is we like to meet, and it takes us a while to get things done. And I think that's one of the reasons why years of going to conferences later, we still are talking about the same problems, right? And I jokingly say that, of all the years I've been in higher ed, I go to conferences year after year and we still have the same problems. Something's wrong. Because maybe we're doing a lot of talking and not actually implementing what we've talked about, because we shouldn't have the same problems 10, 15 years later if we've had all these meetings. And so being able to be innovative and think outside of the proverbial box is important. And as educators, I think we sometimes forget the fact that we learn and need to continue learning as well. And our institutions have to be learning institutions. And so if we are going to impart knowledge, we have to take in that knowledge and do something with it to change what we do for our students. And being innovative and being entrepreneurial, that is critical to the success of higher ed in general, but community colleges in particular. We're supposed to be nimble. The workforce changes. Needs of business and industry change. And if we're continuing to teach the way we want to teach and do what we've always done, we're not going to meet the needs of our business and industry partners. And so we have to make sure that we're innovative. We have to make sure that we are engaged with what's going on in the community, and making sure that our colleges are remain relevant. And so innovation is critical.
And I'll just add, if you think about it, community colleges, higher ed is pretty risk averse, right? We aren't going to be, the leader out there and making big, bold changes. And so it takes big, bold leaders to drive innovation at the institution. What I have found here that's just taken a little longer than I thought is that we have been patching situations instead of just saying it's time to dismantle it. Think about it completely different and rebuild it from the ground up. And I think I heard Anthony say it just takes time to do that, because you have to literally take something apart that was kind of working.
Yes.
It was getting by, and say throw it out and rebuild it. And so it takes the right skill set, it takes the right time to do that. But that innovation, students are going to really vote with their feet. If they're not coming to you, there's a reason, and they're choosing to go somewhere else. And so for Nashville State, one of our greatest needs is to finish what we haven't completed is an academic viability study. Like, do we have the right product mix? Do we have the right mix of programs that meet the needs of our employers and our communities? Because if not, students are going to go find where they are. So, when you talk about being innovative, it is the macro, the institution itself that we're really truly meeting the needs of the community, but it's also that micro entrepreneurial spirit that Tracy talked about in every single area. It can't just be one group driving innovation. It has to be the institution, and I think it takes certain leaders to do that.
No, I agree. I think that's why we're here today, to really dig into your innovative leadership. And so let's talk about the 3 programs that we came together to talk about. So Anthony, we launched Knox Promise thanks to the generosity of the Haslam Family Foundation 1 year ago now. So we've got a year under our belt. Very quickly, for audience purposes, Every student who graduates from a Knox County high school receives the foundation of Tennessee Promise, but also receives a proactive, dedicated completion coach from Tennessee Achieves, a textbook stipend, and access to completion grants, also known as emergency grant funding in the higher ed world. I think this is a game changer. What do you think this has meant for students at your institution? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah. Mute foul. So I'm losing that competition to the other. I wish we hadn't, launched this in a pandemic. We've kind of talked about this a little bit. So, one, I think it's the notion that how can we make sure things that can continue to evolve? So, I think by any measure, we're here because we're celebrating the fact that 100,000 students have enrolled through this program over the course of the last 12 years. I think on all of our campuses, we've seen increased success, and you and I often have a little laugh about who's most responsible for that, but it's great to see on our campuses, the growing number of students. Frankly, when we look at enrollment this fall, the Tennessee Achieves, the Tennessee Promise enrollment is the most stable sector of our enrollment at Pellissippi State, and I think that's true for most of the institutions, right?
Yes,
We've got
right.
those structures in place that, at least for the class of 2020, and hopefully this will hold for 2021, those structures allowed continued enrollment. So what do we need to help make sure that all of our students have the best possible chance to be successful? And so coaching was something that we talked about. Every student has a coach through Knox Promise. Every student has that book stipend because, I've got 2 or 3 kids in college and they bring me these textbooks, and I'm like, it's crazy. So that stipend is very meaningful to many of our students. And frankly, sometimes the textbook is more than the tuition for a single course, which is insane.
Yes, absolutely.
And then that emergency stipend, which has been absolutely critical, particularly in this pandemic when we've needed students who need access to Wi-Fi or need help with computers. Your coaches work so well with the support teams we have at the institution in helping students who are homeless, helping students whose families are dealing with illness and all sorts of challenges. So I just think that additional layer of support is really the next evolution. And I know all of our campuses we're talking about it in different ways, but that notion of holistic student support, how do we support the whole student so that the things that are taking place in their lives don't interfere with their ability to get the skills and credential, the degree they need in order to be successful at the institution and then in our communities. And that's what I love about Knox Promise. Some of the early data is encouraging. You and I have talked about the fact, our general persistence rate from fall to spring is about 78%. I looked it up just before I came on. Persistence rate in the first year of Knox Promise was 91%. That's a significant increase. Now, we'll have to look at retention, but we're looking at it in the midst of a pandemic. So I think the early returns are encouraging. I think it's the right thing to do. And I know the next conversation is, all right, we've done this for Knox County. How do we take it to scale? I know the conversation on campus is, all right, we have Knox Promise for our incoming class of Knoxville, Tennessee Promise students. What are we going to do for the other students at Pellissippi State to replicate this? Because those supports are critical, and there are models throughout the country that have demonstrated that. And I think we're demonstrating it at Pellissippi State. So how do we make it a system? How do we make it a structure so it can benefit all of our students?
Yeah, and I love the partnership between our coaches and your team at Pellissippi State. I mean, you have an awesome team. I love everyone that I've ever worked with at Pellissippi. Having Rebecca on yesterday, president of Chattanooga State, was talking about that her first year was the first year of Knox Achieves. And so many good people coming out of Pellissippi. But I think that seamless alignment between what you're seeing on campus and what our coaches are proactively doing in those conversations are really critical to the success of this program. Okay, Tracy, so Summer Institute, the 6-week program that we lifted up in 2017 after another meeting about data. I just kept having, it was like one of the more exciting meetings that I've ever had. We just kept talking about what we could do and And I remember I got in the car to drive back to Knoxville from Memphis, and I called Randy Boyd and I was like, I just had this meeting. with Dr. Hall, and she's so fired up about this potential summer melt idea that we like sort of collectively had together. And he was like, let's do it. And so he did it, which, you know, thank God for Randy Boy. And I say that.
Yes, that's right.
But it's been a game-changing program also. So just really briefly, it's a 10-week credit-bearing program that we host at the White Haven campus of Southwest. I always say when I talk about it, it smooshes all the best practices together. It's mandatory tutoring. We feed the students. We have a wonderful staff member of Tennessee Achieves that's there working with the Southwest team members to make sure that students are in class every day and that they are early alerts are firing off as they should. And the data around this cohort, just to give everyone, it's 100% minority, 80% Pell eligible, and has a 96% success rate. So talk about what this program means at Southwest.
Well, you know, I think, Chrissy, that the data has been very helpful to us. And so that has been one of the strengths going in, seeing exactly what we need to do. And I think, you know, Anthony mentioned about holistic student support and the boutique programs, but how do we take those to scale? And I think that's what's critical. One of the things that I think that we have to do is to stop doing some things that aren't working. And I think that's difficult for us in higher ed because we see the things like Summer Institute that are working, and then we say, we wish we could take this to scale. We wish we could replicate it. But if we think about it, this is working. It's successful. And some of the other things, if they had been successful, we would see the numbers the way we see them in the Summer Institute, and we're not. So it should come to us, dawn on us eventually that maybe those things should not be done. And then we can reallocate those funds in a way that we can replicate and take to scale a program like the Summer Institute. And so that's what we have found to be very beneficial in terms of the Summer Institute. These are first generation students. I was a first generation student. And so it's not that they can't, a lot of times they just don't know. And so this program helps to really kind of hold their hands, to show them how to be successful in college and the discipline that's required to be successful, because it also, in addition to the academics, there's the tutoring support that they definitely need. But then there's the wraparound support, Chrissy, as you mentioned, bus passes. So I really appreciate it. And again, thanks again to Randy Boyd, because I really appreciate his believing in us and commitment to Southwest to say, let's do it. And all you had to do was just have a phone call, because I remember you said, well, we're going to take it back and see what he thinks about it. So we're like, okay, we hope he says okay. And you know, higher ed or whatever, we thinking we're going to have to wait a while. And you're like, he was positive on the.
I think I called you that afternoon.
Yes,
I was like,
you did.
he said yes.
Right. And I'm like, what? That's quick. Okay. So that was, that was great. And so that belief in us, it has been just wonderful, because the kids needed it. And then to think through what we already know, they needed bus passes. We fed them. And ironically, remember, Chrissy, there was the issues over what they were going to eat. And I'm like, come on now, you all are getting free 10 weeks.
No, I remember
about some hot dogs.
I remember you called me at like 9 o'clock at night, and you were like, I'm getting emails about the hot dogs. And I was like, you're going to school for free.
Right. They didn't complain about anything else but the food, but that's what students do. They have great faculty and all of that, and they complain about the cafeteria or the park. And so again, it was an introduction to college life. And so just thinking about all of their needs. And I think that that's what has been so fantastic about this experience. And I think when you mentioned about White Haven, that helped too, because it's a smaller center. Everyone knows everyone, the staff know the students. And so that helped them not to feel lost on one of our larger campuses. And so all of that has really helped to make it successful. And we look forward to the students coming and getting their first taste of college, but in a way that's kind of like baby steps. And so it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I'm excited about relaunching Summer Institute
Yes,
because
yes.
right,
So
COVID destroyed all our plans.
It did.
Last year.
It did.
Because
But
we were
we
planning
won't
on
be defeated.
launching in Nashville, but we're coming back.
Yeah.
But such a game-changing program.
It really is. And those demographics that you mentioned, 80%, and the Pell eligible and the demographics, that proves that students, if given the opportunity and the support, they can make it. They can
Exactly
do it.
right.
And so a lot of times we look at our students from a deficit model, and we say these poor students, they can't know the fact that they even stepped in our doors. They have grit, if I can use that, being in Memphis, grit city. So they have the grit to be able to do it. It's just they need the support. And so that's what the Summer Institute has given them.
I love it. So great. Okay, so Shanna, let's talk about Better Together. You and I have become best friends over the last 6 to 9 months. We talk at least once a week, and it's been so great. We actually came to Better Together after you announced with Dr. Adrian Battle, Superintendent of Metro Nashville Schools, your grand vision. So talk a little bit about Better Together and the vision there.
I am so excited about Better Together. I
Me
almost
too.
can't contain myself. So first, I just need to set it up to say, Nashville State, our top feeder is Metro Nashville Public Schools. And also for Nashville Public Schools, there are more students that go to Nashville State than TSU and MTSU together, right? So there was a natural alignment that we needed to work together. So I wanted to set that up. We looked at our data and we realized our outcomes are not good. They're not. I mean, they're just not acceptable. There's not enough students from Metro going to college, and there's certainly not enough of them coming to Nashville State and actually completing college. So the whole thought was, instead of me working on it and Dr. Battle working on it, we're better together. And so that's a natural fit. And so the big vision for Better Together is simply to expand college access to get more Metro public school students going to college. Of course, I hope they choose Nashville State, but I'm just invested in making sure that they are on a path to go. But then also making sure students that come to us from Metro Nashville schools are better prepared academically, that we understand what their needs are beyond academic support, and that we have them on a pathway to complete in a timely manner. So that's the big, broad vision. There are certain things that we are focused on, expanding dual enrollment to give them those early post-secondary opportunities. We brought in a unique opportunity with Brightspace. There were some graduate students from Vanderbilt that wanted to really work with Metro Nashville students on tutoring and academic support that has carried over to Nashville State. Similar to Knox Promise is Nashville Grad, which the city has funded, that is a replication of the CUNY ASAP model. And so definitely Metro students can take advantage of Nashville Grad, which is our support for textbooks, emergency assistant, and that ratio with their student success coach. So that's the big picture and our long-term goal. But what happened this summer, where tnAchieves became involved, is that due to COVID, and I have to remind everybody, we had a tornado in Nashville prior to the COVID. So it was boom, boom. We were just being hit left and right. And the fact that we didn't have our normal recruiting opportunities, we were not seeing the applications coming in, certainly weren't seeing the enrollment coming in. And so it was a definite reaction to, we have to do something now. And
It was scary. It was
very
scary for a
scary.
minute.
I did not sleep well. I'm still not sleeping well, to be quite honest, but I'm sleeping a little better. But it was certainly an opportunity to be innovative and entrepreneurial. And so once Chrissy came to the table, it changed everything. Because part of what we wanted to do with Better Together was to create shared data agreement between Metro Public Schools and Nashville State. Well, we already have a data agreement with tnAchieves. And so they stepped up and volunteered to create the framework that's going to be better together when it's all built out. And so we were able to share data, and they were able to share data with us. So they knew who was a Tennessee Promise student who had selected Nashville State, and that we could say, hey, they haven't applied, or hey, they haven't gone to orientation. And so all summer long, we met weekly and still meet weekly to look at the data and see what was happening. And when Tennessee Promise would nudge, we could see the change. And so I don't have the numbers. You'll have to share them, Christy, because I know you have them in your head. That we actually had more students with Davidson County than we weren't at a deficit. We were up. And I remember, I don't remember. Yeah, we were up 6% of high school students that selected Tennessee Promise in Metro Nashville that attended Nashville State. And that is only because of this Better Together partnership and the good work that Tennessee Achieves had brought to the table. So they just stepped up and said, we'll do it. And they did it well. That's one thing that is always impressive. It's not just like, yeah, I'll do it in here. No, it's always like, wow, mind blown. Didn't know we could do this. Now that we can do this, we can do that. And so I think it'll be a continued partnership, because we're going to track those students that are with us every step of the way. And certainly right now, the concern is the class of 2021. And I know because of our partnership that we're going to see the benefit of getting a communication piece to students in a way that students hear it. Because at higher ed, we often just go to college, come to Nashville State. That doesn't resonate. And Tennessee Achieves has a very unique way of nudging students. For instance, with Nashville grad, you get a laptop. And so I think the push was, do you want a free laptop?
Who wants a free laptop?
And so just knowing that they can take the message and craft it in a way for the listener and the audience is really, really such an exciting thing. But I think you're going to see more about Better Together. I really am. I think this is game changing, so exciting, and just looking forward to being able to see the great results that I expect to come because of the partnership.
Well, it's such a model, right? I mean, I think it could be, I mean, this would be not an easy lift. Matt on my team, who did all the heavy lifting in the data space, I did none of the work, just to be clear on the technical side. But, you know, looking at that data, I love that every Friday we have a large superintendent and a large community college president looking at what does this data tell us about students from low-income backgrounds. I mean, it is really that kind of granular level dig in that I hope every superintendent and president is doing, you know, 3 years from now, 1 year from now. Big, hairy, audacious goal. So
Yes,
I was just excited to be invited to the table. So we were thrilled. Okay, Graham's back on, and we have a few minutes for audience questions.
Yes, we've got a few audience questions.
Conversation. I didn't want to give you the, you know, the space.
We do have a few audience questions, and a lot of really positive comments from our audience members so far. Thanking you all for your leadership and all the great things that you're doing. The first question was for Dr. Hall specifically. I think Dr. Jackson touched on it pretty close after the question was asked, but Dr. Hall, you were mentioning earlier that Chrissy came, you said, literally put data on the table, and the question was, what data did Chrissy bring to you that really affected you?
Well, I remember talking about the number of students that filled out the application, but then they did not continue in the process, and kind of where they were. They hadn't completed certain parts of the process. And so that was something that we hadn't talked about, to be quite frank. Again, as I said, we were talking about the bigger challenges with the college on getting students enrolled, but to talk about that they start, but they don't complete the process. And then the focusing in on, I think there was a certain area that was high schools in the Whitehaven area. And so Chrissy brought to us the number of students that would come from the various high schools and how we could really do a better job of penetrating that market, for lack of a better way of putting that. This is information that we really hadn't focused on. And so getting that granular about the details is really critical to making sure that we are not wasting efforts and energy going in a different direction when we just need to look at the data. And so that was very helpful to us.
Dr. Jackson, I know you know this next person. Gina Ryan from Columbia State asked the question, how will changes implemented during COVID change the future of higher ed?
Well, hi, Gina Ryan. I'm glad you're listening. We work together a lot at Columbia State. I think it's already changed everything. I mean, it's disrupted the whole way we do business. We're not going back. People keep saying, when's it going to be back? It's never going back. So we're going to evolve from here. I think for my institution, what was directly helpful was to the faculty. They had to become the learners and learn new tools and technology and how to teach in a primarily virtual way. And I have been really pleased to hear how they feel students are even more engaged in many of their classes. Not all, we're still working on what's the best for each course, but it is a new way to engage with learners who in a classroom would never speak up or speak out. Our processes, when you have to think about, all of us had to, in a very short period of time, go completely online. In a situation where I know Tracy's like me, we are used to people just walking on our campus and we help them. How do you recreate that in a space for students that don't have technology? So we're asking them, when they don't have the tools, to do this new way. And so I know for us, we identified very early that technical divide. And sought a way to do that, and have used our CARES funds to start a laptop loaner program. I called Anthony, he sent me what he uses, and I called Tracy Hall and she sent me what they use because we didn't have one. So it's changing the way we think about serving our students, and I think a lot of good has come out of COVID. And for me, I think that we evolve from here. We learned that we can be innovative quickly. We didn't have a year to decide what we were going to do when COVID hit. And so now we are learning from the things that went well and the things that didn't go so well, and we're evolving and making changes. But I don't think any of us will go back to a very traditional model. I think we're always going to have that blend. I think our extended campuses benefited from that, because classes that would never make because they needed to be in person. I mean, a lot of people have interactive television, but now we have virtual Zoom. It has expanded opportunities, and to me, increased their ability to complete on time because they don't have to wait for a course to come around. So there's a lot of good that came out of it, and I think it will continue to evolve.
Dr. Wise, I'll ask you this last question and before we turn it back over to Chrissy to close it out. Fran asked, what are your plans to reach out to businesses in your communities to ensure that you're meeting workforce needs?
Yeah, so that's really an ongoing conversation at all the community colleges and technical colleges throughout the state. I know at Pellissippi, and my guess is, that even though I haven't talked to my colleagues about this is going on at their campus, well, going on virtually at their colleges right now. Yeah. We have what are called advisory boards for each of our career technical programs. So for nursing, for welding, for media technologies, where we have part of it's our faculty, part of it's local businesses, part of it's our alumni who work in those areas to make sure that our programs are aligned with what's going on in local business and industry. So that's one key way we get to hear from the folks who are hiring our engineering technology graduates. Are they able to do what we say they can do? Are there things changing in terms of manufacturing that we need to implement into the curriculum over the course of the next couple of years? How can we make sure that the people that we graduate can do the work that you want them to do? And then the other way, as leaders of institutions in our community, we're involved in those conversations on a higher level. So meeting directly with the CEOs and the HR directors of businesses that are key to our future, and then serving on boards like our local chambers and making sure that the voice of the community college is connected with the voice of business and industry. It's critical. I think it's one of the things that's been great about tnAchieves and Tennessee Promise over the course of the year. This is not just a strategy of the institutions. It's not just a strategy of the higher education systems within the state. It's a strategy that requires all of us. Graham, you go out and recruit 9,000 mentors that come from all across different sectors of life and work in Tennessee, and that relationship and that commitment to making sure our students can be successful and our institutions are growing and changing, and to making sure that we can serve our communities in the state the way that we need to. It's vital. So it's just part of an ongoing conversation is my answer, and look forward to seeing where it goes next.
Well, we're at the 1 minute mark. Thank you all so much for spending time with us celebrating 100,000 students enrolled, which is just still mind blowing every time I say
That's
it.
great.
We're so thrilled, but I'm thankful to each of you, not only for your leadership and your support, but also your friendship. You guys have become my very dear friends over the course of this 12-year journey. So,
Yes.
so thankful for you and the work that you do every day to best serve students.
And congratulations. Congratulations.
Yes. Congratulations. And thank you. Thank you, Chrissy, for your work. Thank you all, Graham, everyone at Tennessee Achieves. We really appreciate and value your friendship.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Okay, thank you. You as well. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.